Hello everybody and welcome to my super thorough, super comprehensive overview of NRAAS story progression. This mod is very vast and it is a beast of a mod. So in this video, I'll just be going over my story progression settings, but in a separate video, I will show off my master controller settings, my register settings, my Overwatch settings. Those will all be in a separate video, but this video is just for NRAAS story progression. My goal with this video is to be super thorough. I want you guys to come out with an understanding of what these settings do and how you can fine-tune them to create your own perfect game. So what story progression does is it completely overhauls the Maxis made story progression system. In the base game, the town progression happens really slow. If I'm remembering right, and I haven't played without NRAAS story progression in probably like 5 years, but I used to play, obviously I played Sims 3 when I was a kid. People very rarely ever move houses or get married and have children. They're kind of like in a stasis. It feels as though your sim is the only one in town who has anything going for them. They're the only one that is advancing in their life. With NRAAS story progression, people will move in and out, they can get married to other sims in the town, they have their children. The world feels so much more alive, and it is bonkers to me when people say that they play without NRAAS story progression. It upgrades the regular base Sims 3 into like a whole new experience, and it literally is like night and day when you go from playing base game Sims 3 to NRAAS story progression Sims 3, because this mod is such a beast and it can do so much for your gameplay. I know I've gushed about this mod already, but it really is a really amazing mod, and it makes me have a lot of admiration for the creator, Chain Reaction. This mod is insanely comprehensive, and to think that one person made this mod, it just blows my mind, and it lets you play The Sims 3 in a million different ways. I get really sad when people say that they took story progression out of their game because it was lagging. I feel like it just does an injustice to the creator, and I'm gonna give you guys some of my settings that will help you reduce this lag. When you use NRAAS mods in conjunction with other mods by NRAAS like Overwatch, Air Trap, or Go Here, I find that using them all together can actually make the game run really smooth, because you're getting the kind of NRAAS experience and everything is working in this really nice ecosystem. It's like, for example, if you have an iPhone and you have a MacBook, you know how you can just go in your Photos app and airdrop your photo from your iPhone to your MacBook, and it's like the most seamless process ever? It's because you're in the same ecosystem, you're in the same OS ecosystem. Whereas with NRAAS, I feel like everything, you know, the menus all appear really nicely together because you're running in the same mod ecosystem. They're all by the same creator. Let's stop talking here and let's get actually into my settings. So the first thing, this is, I wish I could bold my words right now. Can I put like blinking lights on screen or like alarm bells? If you don't care to go setting by setting and figure out which each tweak does, and you trust me enough to use my gameplay rules in my game, then I will have a link to a file on Google Drive that houses all my NRAAS story progression settings. So if you want to click out of this video and just plop that right into your library settings and import it into your game, then I will show you how to do that right now. But if you care to continue watching, then you can skip ahead. There'll be lots of timestamps in the description where you can skip that import settings tutorial. The first thing you're going to want to do is go to the description box and click on the story progression settings file that I've housed on Google Drive. Then you're just going to drag it to your desktop and navigate to the Sims 3 library folder. Next, you're just going to drag and drop the settings file into the Sims 3 library folder. And you're going to launch your Sims 3 game, and here I'm just showing that in Edit Town, it will show that you have imported the settings if you've done this correctly. Next, you're going to click on a computer or a town hall and click NRAAS Story Progression, General Options, and Import Settings, and then click on the file that you have downloaded that is my settings from Google Drive. It's gonna take a while to input those settings, so if your game freezes, don't worry. Mine froze for about 30 seconds, and then it says settings imported after you have imported my settings into your game. I hope you guys enjoyed that tutorial. Haven't recorded it yet, so I hope it turned out seamlessly. All right, so before we dive into my game with my settings, let's make sure we're on the same page here as far as mods go. Let's start outside of the game first. So you're gonna want to download story progression from the NRAAS website and put that right into your mods folder. Now you can stop here and skip ahead to the timestamp in the description, but I really want to talk about modules for story progression. If you're not interested in modules, and modules are basically a mod for your mod, but I like them because I find that they add a lot of variety with gameplay, which is what I'm looking for when I play my own personal saves. So like I mentioned, story progression has modules, which are basically mods for your mod. So they are add-ons to the base mod story progression. They are completely optional. They're completely optional, but I highly recommend them. I was playing without modules for probably like 3 years, and in the past 2 years I've added more and more modules via the story progression website, and I find that I really like them, and I like what they do to my townies. They give them like even more personalities than they already have. So with these add-ons, you can add elements into your game, like, you know, maybe fine-tuning pensions for your elders, or controlling curfews for the teens and the kids, or even adding personalities for the in-game townies. Specifically, first and foremost, I want to talk about that personality module first. So the personality modules will actually auto-assign personality types to each townie you have living in your specific town. So do you guys know when you get that momentary like 15-second lag when you first start a save, you know, when you have to hit welcome to story progression, do you want to enable it, and you hit no or yes? Well, when you're hitting that check mark and you get that momentary 15-second lag, that is actually story progression, among other things. That's them sorting and picking what townie is going to be what personality for the rest of your save. If you don't have this mod in, then story progression is just setting itself up. But one sim in the town will be assigned to this personality type, and this clan will grow bigger and bigger and bigger as you have more generations go out. So let's say there's one, I'm looking on the story progression website right now, and there is a module called cops and robbers. Now what this adds is it adds the Robin personality, the cat personality, the vigilante, and the kingpin personalities. What the hell does that mean? What does kingpin mean? What does Robin do? Well, okay, let's go down the list here. The cat is the burglar. They rob from the rich and they keep for themselves. Their clan is composed of those sims they have robbed in the past. The town kingpin is the local crime lord engaging in bribery and extortion of the populace. Their clan is composed of minions of the kingpin who do the dirty work. The town Robin, just like Robin Hood does, steals from the rich and gives to the poor. Their clan is composed of sims they have helped in the past. So let's say you have a sim in town, maybe like Vita Alto, okay, from Sunset Valley, or maybe one of the land grabs. Let's use the land grabs because everyone knows land grabs. If you have, you know, the land grabs who start out in the game with like what, 300,000 simoleons or something like that, someone in town will get assigned to be the town Robin, and that town Robin might steal from the land grabs and give to the poorest sim in the neighborhood. I think that's really cool. And when the town Robin steals from that rich sim and gives to the poor, that poor sim will then also join the Robin clan. So the clans grow bigger and bigger, as I mentioned, as generations go on. So this is just one module. This is the story progression cops and robbers module. Now there are many modules that you can get for your game, and I have several in my game, and this is important. This is very important, because if I have a setting that you do not have, that's probably because it either is one of these add-on modules. So the personality mods that I have sorted into my game are as follows: story progression cops and robbers, which obviously I just gave you a pretty in-depth explanation of what that is. I have story progression meanies, which adds the brat, bully, thug, and harpy personalities. I have story progression lovers, which adds the bike, Casanova, gigolo, and tart personalities. And then last but not least, as far as personality mods go, I have the story progression others mod, which adds the loon, the mooch, nerd, and the magnate personalities. So those are just personality modules that I have added on for story progression. I also have 3 other additional modules that have nothing to do with the personality system, but they really help me fine tune and tweak my story progression mod settings. They are story progression extras, which kind of just gives you more scenarios for the base story progression system. This is like one of the probably the most basic ones. You don't have to really touch anything when you do this. Sometimes when you've been playing with story progression for a while, you get kind of sick of seeing the same scenarios happen over and over and over again in your notifications. So what story progression extra will do is it'll give you more scenarios so you don't kind of keep seeing those same ones crop up. The next one I have, which if there's one module, if you don't care for the personality ones, if you don't care for story progression extras, this is the one I would highly recommend getting, this module, story progression skill. So what story progression skill module does, the household you are not playing, so the non-active families in your town that you currently do not have control over, they can normally gain skills. Like they can gain athletic skills, logic skills, writing skills, so on and so forth. But the thing is, they cannot use those skills to say write a book or play in chess matches. What story progression skill does is it allows them to use those skills that they gain with the base story progression and actually use them to make money from them. So a sim with writing skill may write a book. A sim with high logic skill may compete in chess matches around town, and you'll actually get notifications of when those sims decide to play chess matches. Stuff like that. Highly recommend story progression skill. If you don't care for personality types, definitely download story progression skill. And the last but not least, the one I have is story progression money. This is the module that allows you to set pensions and handle, I think it gives you kind of more fine tuning for child support, and you can change tax deductions and all that sort of thing. If you're into that, I don't know why I have story progression money. I don't remember what I was doing. This also lets you control inheritance, loans, billing for the whole town, purchases of vehicles, sales of excess inventory. I'm just reading from the description of the mod. If you want to tweak any of the settings in there, then get story progression money and you can do that. So I am currently in game. You may recognize this family. They are part of my season 6 Legacy Challenge Let's Play, but for all intents and purposes, I'm going to be using them to kind of show you guys how I am set up my settings for optimal gameplay, because the settings I use in that Legacy Challenge are the exact same ones that you will be seeing here in this video. So you can access the story progression menu either by clicking on a computer and hitting NRAAS, and then every single NRAAS mod you have will come up. Like I mentioned, when you work in the same ecosystem, the mod interface is a lot cleaner. You don't have like options like maybe, you know, when you click on the computer, oh, there's one option for register over here, there's one option for Overwatch over here. No, they're all in a really nice consolidated menu under this one NRAAS button. And obviously you're gonna hit story progression. There is another way actually, if you do not have a computer on your lot, what you can do is you can go to the town hall over here and you can hit NRAAS and then every one of your mods. This is the exact same menu that will pop up if you have a computer. So either way you decide to open the story progression menu, you're going to click it. And now we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty, and I'm gonna explain what each of these settings does for you guys. So I am going to show you guys the prime setting. If you don't care about any other settings in this video, you're definitely gonna wanna change this one. You're gonna wanna go into your general options under the story progression setting, and you're going to want to go to all stories, and you're going to want to set this to custom. Now by default this is on all stories, so if you know you have Joe Schmo from down the road that you don't even know, whoa, I just rhymed, and you're getting his story progression settings of him having an affair with Mary Lou, then you're going to probably want to turn that off because you don't care about Joe Schmo's life. So what I do is I go blood, friends, and romantic. So this means sims that are related to my active family's household by blood. Friends means friends of any sim in this active family. And romantic is romantic interest of any sim in my active family. And these settings I find really weed out the garbage that you get for your notifications, and it definitely helps speed up your game because you're not having as many notifications pop up in here that, you know, make this really crowded and kind of annoying to play. So in addition to setting all stories to blood, friends, and romantic, I also set my speed of story progression progression to fast. Now I have had this on default and I think default is a little bit too slow, so I like to kind of make maximum chaos here. If you really want to max chaos, you could set this to rabbit, which is the fastest setting in this entire menu, but I like mine fast. I feel like it's kind of a nice medium between the slower setting, which is default, and the super sped up setting, which is rabbit. If you set it to rabbit, your Sims will get in relationships and have babies at the max speed they can according to your story progression settings, but I find that fast is pretty nice. So let's start out with the menu I probably go into the most in my LEPSEs is the caste options, specifically for teenagers. So let me explain what a caste is first. For those of you that didn't skip over the module section of this video where I kind of explain what modules are, you will know that when you start up a new town, obviously you get prompted by NRAAS, do you want to enable NRAAS story progression in this town? And then you're able to click the X or the check mark. Well, if you hit that check mark, you will get like 15 seconds of complete lag where your whole entire game is frozen. What that is doing in that moment, among also putting everyone in the town into a personality type, it is also putting them in a caste. So obviously I have my active family caste. That means the family I'm currently playing with. The active rentable caste, which is if you're renting out properties. I never really do rentable properties, although it would be kind of cool to explore how that works. The adults caste, so only Sims who are adults will show up in here. The disgraced by age caste, I don't know what that means. Elder females, elders, females, and so on and so forth. So what do these do exactly? Well, let's say in my game, let's say I have two elders in my town here, and let's say I don't want them to age at all. I can go and I can fine tune just for elders. I can turn off aging. And if you want to do that, all you would do is go under death, allow aging. You would hit the check mark and you would turn that to false. So now in my town, no elders will age at all. They will stay in their current age for the rest of eternity until I turn this back to the true setting. So you can really go in here and fine tune really precisely specific things you like. Let's say I don't want vampires to have any babies because they're dead. Why would they be able to have babies? Well, then I can go under the vampire caste. I can scroll down to pregnancy. And then if I hit allow participation, I can just hit the check mark and it will turn the allow participation into false, which means that they will not be able to have any babies in the game. Or if I want aging to be turned on for vampires, because in base Sims 3, they do live forever, then I can also turn aging back on for vampires, and I think they just age like a regular Sim. So those are just two examples of things you can really get in with caste options and kind of fine tune. You would just have to go under here by yourself and kind of decide what you want to turn on, what you want to turn off. But I generally like to keep these on what they are by default, except for one age group, and it is for these guys right here, teenagers. A lot of people are confused because in the community, if you ask, where can I find a teenage pregnancy mod? People will point you towards NRAAS story progression. But you kind of got to get in here and really fine tune some of these settings so that you can allow teen pregnancy, because by default, it's not on by story progression. So this is actually my first place where I really go in and fine tune some of these settings. Before I get into showing you guys how to enable teen pregnancy, let me show what else I do for my teenagers. If you have NRAAS story progression installed in your game, you will know that by default, NRAAS story progression tries to fill up jobs that have not so many Sims at them. And usually by default, those are the part-time careers. So you could have an elder that becomes a spa specialist, or maybe an elder that works at a grocery store. That's because that position is missing Sims in it, and story progression is trying to fill up those slots so that everyone has coworkers and everyone has a boss and so on and so forth. But with story progression, it will try and force teenagers to get careers, I guess, because they just don't have them by default. You know, when a teen ages up, they automatically don't get a wish to have a career for the most part. Sometimes they do. So the first thing I actually come in here and I fine tune is I turn off allow find job false. Now at first I thought this was going to be good enough so my teenagers do not automatically try and find jobs, because I was coming across this really annoying problem where a Sim that my teenager was trying to date would automatically find a job, and I would never have any time for my house's teenager to try and pursue a non-active family's teenager sim. And it was becoming a problem because I wanted my sim to have their first kiss, their first woohoo, etc, etc, and I wasn't able to do it because the other house's teenager was always at work. So I came in here and I hit career, allow, find job, and I called it a day. But that was actually not good enough to completely disable teenagers from having careers. So what I had to do is I had to come under here and hit career disallow. And as you can see, there's a 45 next to it. So I hit the check mark. And so by default, all of these settings will be turned to true. You have to come in here and hit disable for each of them. The only ones that I leave on are elementary school and high school. I don't know why I keep elementary school on. I guess, I don't know, teenagers don't go to elementary school, but my line of thinking is because elementary school and high school are in the same building, I don't want any conflicts to pop up, so I just keep both of them on. Don't worry, it doesn't do anything because elementary school, the Sims can't find a job for elementary school, so it doesn't matter if you leave that on. So that is what I do as far as jobs go for my teenagers. This is completely to your own liking. If you like every single teenager in the town to be pushed to get a job, then go ahead and don't touch those. But I find it really annoying that my teenagers were not able to hang out with the other townie teenagers because they always had part-time jobs. Now, the next thing I do over here is concerning flirting and pregnancy for my teenagers. Now, let's say I have a teenager. So I think teenagers, when they age up to being a teenager from a child, they are probably about 13 or 14 years old. I think that is way, way, way too young to be dating the next life stage up, which is young adult. That is way, way too young. That is very illegal. But personally, I think by the end of their teenage years, they're probably about 18 or 19 years old. And obviously that is legal to be dating a young adult. So what I will do, let's say that Nico over here has a girlfriend, well, romantic interest named Rosemary. Now let's age Rosemary up to a young adult and let's see what happens when they try to flirt. Yay, happy birthday, Rosemary, right next to your bed, girl. With Nico's older sister sitting in the same room playing foosball, who's not even paying attention. Nice. All right, any second here, Rosemary. There she goes. Oh boy, she's got the adventurous trait and she's bald-headed. Okay, cool. Let's have Rosemary come over here, and obviously Nico and her are still romantic interests, but because Rosemary is now a young adult, she will not be able to flirt with Nico because he's too young. There isn't even the romantic option here. But if Nico was towards the end of his teenage years and he was around 18 or 19 years old, I would allow him to be in a romantic relationship with Rosemary because she's probably about 20 years old right now, and if he was towards the end of his teenage years, he would be about 18 or 19 years old. So to enable young adult and teen relationships in these very rare circumstances, I go into caste options, teenagers. First, I have to go under flirt, disallow caste, and I have to enable young adults. I just have to click it. It currently says disabled. I have to enable it. So now there will only be 2 castes that Nico cannot flirt with, and that's elders and adults, which is fine by me. I don't want him with someone that is that old. Now, if I want them to woohoo, I have to go under pregnancy, allow participation, and hit that to true. And then I have to go pregnancy, disallow participation caste, and I also have to turn on young adults for that. So this will make it so that a teen can be in a relationship with a young adult. And I don't keep this on all the time because I do not like teenagers getting with young adults. I think that when they're as young as Nico is right here, then that is very problematic. But for this scenario, Nico is going to be 18 or 19 years old, not 13 or 14 years old. So now if we have Nico go over to his romantic interest Rosemary, obviously he has the romantic interactions, but as you can see, this little icon next to it, that is the pedo bear. That's the pedo bear. So the game is telling you that this is a gross illegal relationship, and that will pop up every single time that you click romantic on a young adult with a teenager, but that's just the game kind of putting warning and alarm bells in your head. Now, the caveat to having this on all the time means that teenagers in the town, not just our active families teenagers, they will also be able to flirt with young adults. Teenagers will be able to flirt with young adults. And so what I do is I only have this on for very, very short periods of time in rare circumstances when I have a sim that is not the same age as their young adult counterpart. Now, let's say you don't care about young adult relationships. You're here for the teen pregnancy. Well, I'm going to show you how to do that. So I have aged Rosemary. I'm going to send her back down here. I'm going to send Nico over here. I aged her back down to a teen over here. And by default, even in base game, teenagers are able to flirt with each other. So that's not a problem. What is a problem is that teenagers cannot get pregnant by default. Now, let me remind you, there is no clothing in the game for teen pregnancies. You have to install some teen maternity clothes. You can just Google teen maternity clothes and for Sims 3 and they will automatically pop up. But if you don't install maternity clothes for your teenagers and they end up getting pregnant, your teen will be a floating head. They will have no body, no torso, just a floating head. So before your teen gets pregnant, or honestly during their pregnancy, you can go in and change their clothing. It doesn't really matter. Make sure you have maternity clothes installed. But by default, all Nico can do with Rosemary is woohoo with her. He can't try for a baby with her. He cannot risky woohoo. It says progression denied, as you see here. So to turn on teen pregnancy for your entire town, this is not just for your household, this will be for the entire town. So once again, I will explain. I turn this on and off because I'll explain in a second. What you have to do is go under pregnancy, allow participation. And if you have NRAAS Woohooer, you also need to turn on teen pregnancy under general, I think it is. Sorry, it's under woohoo. You have to hit allow teen woohoo and allow teen adult woohoo as well. But they won't do this as long as you have that setting turned off in story progression. I don't really know. I think this is the only option though, but once again, this is a different video. Woohoo is a totally different video. I'm just letting you guys know you have to have it on in Woohoo as well. I think if you don't have NRAAS Woohooer installed, you just have to turn it on in your caste options though. So now that I have turned the pregnancy allow participation setting to true, we are now able to try for a baby and risky woohoo with Miss Rosemary over here with teenagers. So there's caveat to this one as well, because if you leave this setting on, teenagers in your town, almost every single teen by the end of their life stage will have a child. There is no gauge that I can set under caste options teenagers and scroll on the pregnancy. There's no gauge I can set. I can't choose. I want every 3 out of the 15 Sims in this town that are teens to have babies. No, the game does a check yes or no. It rolls the dice and it says this Sim got pregnant, this Sim will not get pregnant. You cannot choose, I want 3 Sims out of the 15 in the town to have babies. There's no gauge like that. So what I do is I turn this on in my personal gameplay. If I have a teenager in my household that is sexually active, I will turn this on for probably 2 or 3 day stints, and I will leave it off for the rest of the time because I do not want teens in town to be popping out babies left, right, and center, because we experienced that in my Generations Let's Play where almost every single teenager had a baby by the time that they were aging up to young adult, and that is a really big problem. So if you want lots and lots of teen babies in your town and you just want a town filled of teen parents, then be my guest. But personally, it's not realistic for real life. There's not so many teen pregnancies in real life. Oh, she's going to scare her sister-in-law. That's fantastic. I love that. Anyway, so those are my teenage settings. Now there's some other options in here that you can set up. You can do pregnancy allow adoption. This will allow your teenagers to adopt babies, which is really weird to me. I mean, they're like 16 years old. They're not going to be adopting children. But if you want to turn that on, that's there for you. I've already explained the pregnancy allow participation caste, and I've also explained the disallow participation caste. If you don't remember, that's disabling and enabling young adult, elder adult relationships with teenagers. I don't really touch that all that much except in those rare circumstances that I talked about. And you can also allow marriage for your teenagers, but I always have this off because of how I think of my teenagers as 15, 16, 17-year-olds. I think in the United States, at least, you have to be 18 years old to get married. And by the time my Sims are young adults, I think they're about 20 or 19 years old. I don't have an exact number that I think they are, but they are not old enough basically when they are teenagers to get married. So I always have my allow marriage caste off. So those are all my caste settings that I touch. Everything else stays the same. Teenagers require a lot of effort though on my behalf to get them to where I like them and where I like to play them. So with that out of the way, let's go back into general settings. Note that if you are missing some of the modules that I have, which I mentioned all of those that I currently have in my game for this tutorial in the module section in this video, check the timestamps below and you can see where I list all of them, then I might have some settings that you don't have and vice versa. So you might have some settings if you installed all the modules, just all of them, you might have some settings that I don't have. And we'll go one by one through each of these options right here. A lot of these I have not touched because I find that they are really nice the way they are. But going into the first setting, options career here, I have forced teen jobs set to false. And I think everything else here is default, but once again, go setting by setting with me and make sure that I'm not skipping. Obviously, these settings that I changed, they're not color coded, so I can't tell what the default settings are for story progression. I played with this mod so long, I don't remember what the defaults are for these, but I do know that I have forced teen jobs set to false. I don't know if I changed any one other of these, but I will also go into options job performance. You guys can check if you have the same one as me, and options retirement and see if you guys have the same settings as me. Definitely pause the video if you want to check. But even with forced teen jobs set to false, the teens were still fucking getting jobs. So I had to manually go into my caste settings for story progression and literally disallow the jobs for the teens because seriously, the game was forcing teen jobs at any fucking setting it could. So I want this definitively turned off. And when I went to caste options and I definitively turned it off like that, that actually ended up doing the trick. But yeah, going into general options careers and turning forced teen jobs to false didn't do it. So that's it I have set for careers. Let's go into option castes. I don't think I've touched anything in here, but once again, pause the video and double check. So options deaths is the next setting in the story progression. Now I have two settings in here that I've changed. So the first one is options death ancestral first choice. Now what this does is typically this is set to firstborn. I know that for sure, that this by default is set to firstborn, but this determines who will get your Sim's inheritance and who will be the first choice, I guess is a good way to put this, of the inheritance that your Sims have. So I have two elders here. Let's say that these two elders die. Well, by default, if we're going firstborn, if we go to the family tree here, we can kind of see Iris is the firstborn according to the family tree. So what this is gonna do is this is gonna take Iris and she's going to have priority over all her other siblings to get the inheritance. I didn't really like this because I find that when I have it set to that, I was getting the same stories over and over again. The firstborn kid gets all the money and then the rest are kind of screwed. But if I choose random, a random child out of these ones that they have, not counting Eleanor because she doesn't live in this town, but out of Nico, out of Mila, out of Jack, and out of Iris, the game will randomly choose a Sim to inherit the fortune that they have, which is currently 55,000 simoleons. So I definitely would recommend adding ancestral first choice to random. And then because I know some players really like to have to work for their money, this is a setting I have set to true in my own personal game, but I'm just bringing it up in case you guys might not want inheritance on. So you can turn this to true or false, and then let's say Rags here dies. He will not give his kids any money when he dies because inheritance will be set to false. You can also choose who inherits money. So let's say Rags here had no children, you know, he doesn't have the 5 or however many that he currently has. Well, next in line would be his friends to get priority, and then if he had no friends, maybe his aunts or uncles would get priority next after friends. But first priority is children, second priority is friends, and then third priority is relatives. But if you don't want friends to inherit any of the money, then you can just turn that setting off and it will now be set to under inheritors. This is just some settings that you can fine tune in here. Next option is flirt. Now this one is gonna take me a second here to explain, because there is two very big settings that you guys probably want to adjust, and it is chance of bisexual sim and chance of gay sim. By default, these values are set super duper low, to the point where I was getting no sims in my base game that were gay and that were bisexual, and I found that I was really lacking with the gay and bisexual sims and the diversity that it was bringing to my town. In order to calculate chance of gay sim and chance of bisexual sim, there is a little bit of math that you need to put in here. I feel like if you do not change the default values, you're gonna have straight sims all over the place, and everyone will be straight, and that's just not realistic. I like to play realistically. There are gay people, there are bisexual people out there, so why shouldn't they be represented in my sim game? If you don't care about this and you trust my values, then you can put 10 for chance of gay sim, which is a 10% chance, and then 17, which is a 15% chance. I know this number here says 17, but this number up here for chance of bisexual sim is not the number that it says. This is 15%, and I know it says 17. So for instance, let's say I want chance of gay sim to be 30%. So every single new baby that is born in my town will roll a 30% chance of being gay. So that means there is a 70% chance that they will be straight, right? But let's say I want a 45% chance of that baby rolling to be bisexual. Well, this is where the little bit of math comes in, because you have 70% chance that is rolling to be straight, because 100% minus 30% is 70. So what you have to do, because I want chance of bisexual sim to be 45%, that means you have to divide the 45% chance of there being a bisexual sim and divide that by the population that will roll to be straight, which is 70%. And you will multiply that number by 100, and I got 64. So I'm going to input that 64 in here. So what these numbers now read is a 30% chance of a new baby being rolled to be gay, and a 45% chance of a new baby rolling to be bisexual, and then the baby at last will roll to be straight. So there's a little bit of math here, because there is the bisexual value, the gay value, and then there is a value that is straight, but obviously you can't see that here. I hope that made sense to you guys. Next up in the options, flirt. I would highly recommend, I don't remember if this is on by default, but the Romeo and Juliet flirt. Now this is kind of a feature I just want to talk about here really quickly, because it is so freaking cool. So this allows enemies of two households, children, to be pushed together. Just like how in Romeo and Juliet, Romeo comes from an enemy household of Juliet's family. But in a sim context, this might mean, let's go to Sunset Valley, and let's just think about this here for a second. So in Sunset Valley, there is little Malcolm Landgrab, who spawns in the game as a child. There is Holly Alto, who lives right across the street from Malcolm Landgrab in the opposing household. Now let's say when little Malcolm ages up to a teenager, Holly is also still a teenager. Well, if you have this Romeo and Juliet flirt setting turned on, they will actually be drawn to each other more than any two old teenagers in the town would, because of this Romeo and Juliet flirt setting is turned on. I find that this is such a cool feature that they added with story progression, and I highly recommend you guys to keep it on, because it does add so much depth, and I think it also gives you a special little notification if two opposing households do have children that eventually do get in a flirt scenario. Now, in my own personal gameplay, I do not have any settings changed under option friendships, but let me offer this up to you guys. I know a lot of people hate the celebrity system in The Sims 3. Now, this is where you can kind of fine-tune some of those settings. I don't know why it's quite under option friendships. It doesn't make all that much sense to me, but it is under there. You can turn off false accusations. You can change the star level it takes to be level 1 in celebrity, level 2 in celebrity, level 3, and so on and so forth. And there's all these really nice settings that you can fine tune in here. Personally, I really enjoy the celebrity system in The Sims 3, so I don't touch anything in there, but I know a lot of people do not like it, so you can kind of fine tune some of those settings in there, and that's where you can find them. Just like options friendships, I also do not have anything in options households that I change or take off of default, but just double check your settings against mine to make sure that I'm not lying about that. Once again, it doesn't tell me which settings I've changed, if I've changed any in here, so I wouldn't know. Option lots, I don't think I've changed anything, but just check your settings. So options money, I'll probably have some extra settings if you guys do not have the NRAAS story progression money module installed, but I have not changed anything in here. But you can just check your settings next to mine and just pause the video. Options personality, I do not have anything set, but if you have the story progression personalities module, this is where you can kind of fine tune and choose a sim that you want to fit into these personalities. So I talked about it at the beginning of this video, what these personality modules do. Let's say I want to change the town Casanova to my sim here, Jack. Well, then I can come in here and I can choose, and it will also show the score for each of the sims. So it will calculate a score of each of the sims in town, and the sim that has the biggest score will automatically be the town Casanova. Now, I think this just factors in their traits. So if a sim is a hopeless romantic, if they have commitment issues, if they're flirty, then that is going to give them a really, really high score. And currently Jamar Whitfield, who, if you guys have watched my season 6 of my Sims 3 Legacy, then you will know he makes his way around town and he has a lot of romantic interests. But you can choose your own town Casanova if you kind of want to fine tune that. But I kind of like the way that each of these personalities are generated, so I tend to keep them the same sim that story progression thinks it should be. Now, surprisingly, options pregnancy, I actually haven't touched anything in here. Believe it or not. At least I don't think I've touched anything, but make sure you compare your settings to mine. Now, options romance, I do have things messed with in here. Now, I only have a couple of things changed. Actually, I think I only have one thing changed, which is cooldown breakup to partner. So I was finding that sims that just got out of a relationship were too quick to get into another relationship. So I have this set to 4, which means 4 days in between a sim breaking up with one sim and then getting with a new one. And once again, you can change the cooldown for sims that just got engaged to the second that they will be married. I have it set to the default, which is 1. I could probably up that though. They do get married a little too quickly after they get engaged, but it's okay. Options scoring, I don't have anything changed. The speed is still set to the default. Options sims, I don't think I have anything changed. Options situations, I have a really, really important setting change that I'm sure you guys will also want to change. Check your settings to make sure they line up with mine. But I do have options, grads, proms, curfew. If you go in here, you can change these certain days that curfews are enforced. I was finding it really stupid that curfews were being enforced on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, because those are the days that my sims, you know, it's the weekend. So why would they have a curfew on the weekend? But I do enforce the curfew Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They have their free days where they do not have to have a curfew by their parents. Options skills, I do not have anything changed, but there is a lot of settings in here that you can fine tune, and I know for sure that some of these settings probably do come from NRAAS story progression skills module. And options stories I have set to the default. So those are all my general options here. Let's go into immigrant options. So just like the caste options, the menu is the exact same. There is only 2 settings in here I think I changed, which is the romance marriage name, and then I changed that to husband, and then romance marriage same sex, I change it to coin flip. And then if you just hit the check mark and then go back to town options, we'll skip law options for now. If you go into town options, I actually have 4 settings in here that I've changed. Just like the immigrant options, I changed the romance marriage last name to husband and the same sex one to coin flip. But I was finding that I wasn't getting very many affairs, and I really, really like the affairs. I do think that these affair settings have to do with story progression lovers module, I do believe. So you might not have these by default, but I'm not exactly sure. But I wanted more affairs, so I changed the setting to 10 for affair adultery chance and affair liaison chance and flirt discovery chance, which is the chance that a spouse will find out that their other spouse is cheating on them. And then I think when you change these defaults, it will also change in immigrant options. But once again, if it doesn't change in immigrant options, then you can just go in here and change these values to 10. Or however, if you want a bigger chance, if you want like a 50% chance, 50% chance that a sim will roll for cheating on their spouse, then you can change that to 50. I just have it set to 10 so that every single spouse is not cheating on their significant other. Oh, one last setting. So I guess I have another setting here. I do career disallow because one of my biggest pet peeves is when sims that are my non-active household have jobs and they are like ghost hunting and doing daycare stuff and they're firefighting, because I had this happen to me in one of my leprosy parts, but we were unable to click on the city hall because there was an ongoing ghost paranormal experience. Look at this giant cloud of smoke. That means that there is a ghost hunting here, I think. I can't even... Are you fucking kidding me? I can't click on the goddamn city hall. Really? Why? I think it was ghosts, or it could have been firefighting, either one. So what I do is so that my city hall is functional at all times, because when you have a ongoing profession disaster at one of these lots, you cannot even click on the lot. I have story progression, town options, and then I just career disallow all the professions. So I have angler, architectural design, art appraiser, astronomer, bands. I have all of these disabled so that sims can not do these professions because they really bother me. So basically all my townies will just join rabbit hole jobs, which I'm fine with. And last but not least, the final setting I want to kind of bring up to you guys is sometimes if a sim has just aged up to being an elder, I think that they're probably about 45 or 50 years old. Now, it's very, very rare, and there are birth defects that can come with having a baby that late in your life. But if your sims, if you think that they didn't have enough babies, if you think your elders didn't have enough babies, then there is a setting you can change in here to turn elder pregnancy on. But just to kind of keep it so there's at least a little bit of realism, I tend to turn this on for maybe 1 or 2 days of them being an elder. I don't keep it on their entire elder lifespan because having a baby at 80 years old, I don't think is all that realistic. So to do that, you go into elder females, and then you can go down here and hit pregnancy allow participation, and then that will be turned to true. And then if I come over to Rags, his wife and him will now be able to try for a baby despite her being an elder and very, very old. But that's just something you may want to turn on or off, and I'll just let you guys know how to do that. Last but not least, we have my lot options settings, and nothing is changed in here. But if I were to change something, I think I would probably change maximum size pet, because I get kind of annoyed when families have about 6 different pets. I usually like to keep that down to 2. So that's just food for thought. You might want to change that. I probably am going to change that after I record this video. So guys, that is my story progression settings video. Very, very in-depth, very, very detailed, very, very comprehensive. I hope I explained everything well and you guys got to understand how to use the story progression mod. It is an extremely powerful tool if you are knowing how to use it, and I'm hoping that by explaining it and kind of shedding some light on some of the finer details and minor tweaks that you can do, that you can kind of create a sim game that you guys like to play. But if you have any story progression questions or things that I didn't cover that you're still confused on, you can comment them below and I will be sure to respond to you guys. But I want to thank you all so much for watching, and watch out for my master controller settings video, including all of the other NRAAS mods like register, Overwatch, because I do have some settings changed in there. Once again, if you don't want to adjust these settings yourself, then I will have a link to a Google Drive file in the description box below where you can download these settings and just plop them right into your game. But thank you guys all so much for watching. I hope you did enjoy, and peace out.